Time to go lights out with the one and only NASCAR and motorsports writer, Holly Cain. Holly, I'm so glad to talk to you, and I'm glad we also got to see each other in person. The last time we met up, you were about to give the command for the Xfinity Series race at Vegas. How much fun was that, and just what kind of an honor is that to get asked to do that?
Wow, that's what I'm still saying. I still can't believe it. It was so much fun. It was an incredible honor, and I did it on behalf of breast cancer patients all over, and on behalf of the people that help take care of me and my friends, my family, but on behalf of breast cancer patients everywhere. So it was awesome that the Las Vegas Motor Speedway wanted to recognize us, the patients, and kind of what we've been through. And for me, I never in a million years, or at least in my 35-year career, would have seen that coming. So it was really special. And I have to tell you, so much fun. I almost felt like I should have just exited stage left after.
Yeah, well, Holly, I didn't ever have a chance to tell you this, I don't think, but my mother was a breast cancer survivor when she was alive,
Wow.
and it was early detection that made her experience with it. She says, and I don't believe it was as easy as she said. I think she was being herself and downplaying it. But she said because of early detection, it was a fairly easy process. I don't think it was that easy. But anyway, the bottom line is that early detection is so important. And how much has NASCAR helped you and your effort to get the word out to people to get checked and to be smart?
Well, I'm glad that your mother was able to get in and get someone to look at it and get the early treatment, because you're 1,000,000% right. It makes all the difference in the world. I unfortunately was already late stage 3 by the time I even was diagnosed, and that was in my 40s. So I think the sad thing is it's happening to a lot of younger women and men than we used to think was possible. So being able to get in and get it done. And then, as you say, I mentioned, I've kind of taken it upon myself in whatever forum, whatever outlet I can to make sure people get checked. And it's just so important. It can be the difference between, well, first of all, cancer is never easy, no matter what. But it can make a difference in how intense that healing process is going to be for you. So I tell my friends, I'm like the nagging person that they never wanted. Get checked, and I stay on them. And certainly I have a young daughter, and she knows.
So, Holly, it was January this year that I found myself very surprisingly laying on a hospital table and having 2 doctors tell me, I do not know how you are alive. You should be dead, and we're about to fix you as fast as we can. And fortunately, I came out on the good side. I feel as if you're really coming out on the good side. But what was that like for you, Holly, when you first heard those words and you knew, that your life was going to change because of a health matter?
Well, I am so glad that you made it through, because that was a very frightening time for those of us that cared about you, much less I can't imagine what you were going through. So I'm glad to see you on the other side. And, it's tough. And you know this. I always tell people that the patient has it easier than the ones that love us and care for us, because we're constantly trying to reassure them, I'm going to be okay. But, it does help to have people that care. I had the first time I was diagnosed, my children were in middle school, and it was very difficult for them. In fact, I lost all of my hair in the chemotherapy and wore wigs not because I was vain, but because I was just trying to not make things so crazy for my kids, not for it to be so obvious. Look at mom now, she must be really sick. She's lost all her hair. So I was very careful about that. The second time that I just went through it, I did not lose as much hair. At least other people wouldn't be able to tell. I can, my hairdresser can, and I wore my hair in ways that you wouldn't be able to. And that's silly, of course. Your hair, who really cares about it? But in some ways, it's kind of, you look a lot sicker when you've lost your hair. And so, just kind of managing those things was important. And everybody makes different choices on it, for sure. But yeah, and it was something to get through. And with my kids, it was very harsh, the reality of it for them. And I worried more about them and for my mother than I did about myself, genuinely.
Man, I know exactly what you're talking about, Holly, and I want to say the same thing. I'm so glad that you came out on the good side of it. We've been friends for a long time, and I've always admired your strength through this thing, Holly. But to go back, way back in history, when you talked the other day with Lee Spencer and we shared your interview on the air, I didn't quite realize, and let me make sure I got this right. When you started writing for motorsports, that wasn't necessarily, it kind of found you, didn't it? Not necessarily you finding it, but that career path was a little bit unexpected for you?
It absolutely was. Actually, even covering sports was unexpected. When I graduated, I thought I was going to do hard news, but my father was a sportscaster, so I grew up in it, all kinds of sports. Hockey, he covered college sports, he covered pro sports. So I grew up in sports, so to speak. And the opportunity I got after graduating college was as a sports writer. So I said, let's do it. And, but I worked at the Tampa Tribune right away. And obviously the 12 Hours of Sebring is huge, the Rolex 24 at Daytona, and obviously NASCAR was at the time. And for a young sports writer, that became an opportunity for me to go out and try and begin making my name in the sport. However, I also covered a lot of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I did feature writing. And one of my favorite things was I got to cover the New York Yankees, whose spring training was in Tampa. And back then, the Tampa Bay Rays didn't exist. So the Yankees, and George Steinbrenner lived in Tampa. That was kind of our hometown team. So it was a wonderful opportunity for me. I got to cover in the 1990s or postseason, and Joe Torre was the manager and Derek Jeter was new. And it was really a fantastic opportunity. And from there, went to the Dallas Morning News, covered the Texas Motor Speedway. But in addition to that motorsports, I also did a lot of Dallas Cowboys football. And then when I went to Seattle, that was a whole other situation because motorsports at the time wasn't as big up there. They didn't have a racetrack, obviously, we know, in the Pacific Northwest. However, I got lucky because they did have a couple of young kids named Greg Biffle and Casey Cain who were just starting out and getting really good at NASCAR. So I'm like, I have that background. Let's talk about them. Let's cover them. So I did a lot of that. Also covered baseball, covered the Mariners. And when Lou Piniella was the manager and Ichiro was playing, it makes me feel old when the guys I covered are all in the halls of fame now.
So, Holly, I'm glad in this day and age, I think nowadays we're getting really to a point where we're all just journalists. It doesn't really matter if we're male or female. But you were basically back in the 90s still somewhat of a lady in a man's world. Did you ever have hurdles to get over because of that?
Well, I really did. It makes me happy to see that not as bad now for a lot of the young women that are out there working, and I'm really glad for them. But when I started in the 1990s, you bet there were a lot of hurdles to overcome. Obviously, the age-old question of being able to go into the locker room and get quotes after a football game or a baseball game. That was a very awkward situation. Nobody wants to go and do that. Even the men don't like to do that. So I had to deal with that and what that could bring from, some of the players that didn't appreciate having a woman in the locker room. Back in the 1990s, early 1990s, when I started, it wasn't such a prevalent situation that it is now. And the players, the athletes, didn't come out and hold press conferences and sit at a big desk after the games. You had to go in and get them at their locker. And, a lot of times they weren't happy if it was a guy that missed a field goal in the closing minutes or seconds of a game. He's not going to be super happy when you go and talk to him. But I did have to deal with that. And also a lot of well, you're a woman, how do we know you can cover it? I will say, when I was covering the New York Yankees, they were absolutely fabulous to me. Those players were 100% backed me, and I still to this day will see or have contact with some of them on social media. I remember Bernie Williams kind of having my back, Wade Boggs, and it was really nice to know that they just respected me for what I wrote. And I think that was the key. Look at the product. See what I wrote. I do know what I needed to know, and I was asking intelligent questions of them. It just took a little while for it to be accepted, and I was always I try to be very respectful, obviously.
Yeah, that's one of the most important parts of it. But I think, Holly, these days, and I don't know if you see the same thing that I see. Sometimes when we go to the way a lot of people take in their media through social media these days, they feel as if that's the place to get all their information. But when you and me started in journalism, we had to be accountable for what we wrote because there weren't so many outlets. You had to have a source, you had to have accountability, and you had to have credibility at the same time. I think it's changed, but do you see that changing as much as I do these days, Holly, and how it's kind of hard to hold on to just reporting the facts these days?
When I worked at newspapers, you didn't just have to have one source, you had to have two sources in everything that was published. And at the Dallas Morning News, for instance, we didn't go with unnamed sources told me. That wasn't going to cut it. There was so much, their credibility was at stake. And, I think that I'm glad that is my background in journalism, because I think it helps me be a better journalist now. But you're absolutely right. And I think that certainly a lot of the younger people that come in and are only doing social media as their form of journalism, I think there is a need for that. I mean, I have children in their early 20s, and I know that's what they're looking at. However, sometimes it does create a different level of, I don't know if professionalism is the right word, but just expectations in doing it the right way. And I think some do and some don't. And it's very obvious. So much now is about just having the story or the news out first. It's not about how you do it or somebody confirming before you do it. And frankly, even looking at kind of the whole of what that news is. It's just about getting out first in a tweet. And I'm old school. To me, that isn't enough. A tweet isn't enough to represent a news story.
I'm with you 100% on that. Holly, I got to tell you a funny story. Me and my buddy Skipper Wiles, this is one of the last things I did. We covered everything. We covered racing in Charlotte, football, and basketball. And right before I went into NASCAR full time, a guy named Larry Johnson was about to leave the Charlotte Hornets. Well, he knew that we had a deadline, that we had an 11 o'clock newscast, so we couldn't stay. So what we did was we handed off the tapes to an intern. He took them back to the TV station, and we stayed there. And like at about 10 till 11, Larry Johnson comes walking out of the shower to see us standing there, and he was very surprised to see us still there because he was just trying to avoid us and he didn't want to talk to us. Now, fast forward 2 weeks later, we're at the racetrack where wonderful people like Jeff Gordon, Bobby Labonte, Dale Jr., all these people are there. They want to talk to you. They welcome you with open arms because they need to represent their sponsor to get paid. They need to be popular to get paid. So I love that aspect of the two. I love covering all sports, but when I went to NASCAR, that was what changed for me. Did you see the same thing?
Absolutely. I was like, what is going on? Everyone is nice. They want to be interviewed.
Yeah.
Even if they've had a bad day, it still helps to get their sponsor plugged, right? I have found, and that's part of the reason why I had opportunities to go and cover other sports more on a full-time basis, even at other major newspapers. And I am so glad that I was able to instead make auto racing. And now it is primarily NASCAR, although I cover IndyCar some and cover Formula One a little bit as well, and have covered the NHRA, but motorsports in general across the board. The competitors are so eager to talk to you. I mean, it's absolutely amazing when they walk up and say, "What do you need?" As opposed to what what we used to have to go to. And I get it. People, waiting in the locker room thinking that they can avoid you. I love that story. I've told the story before. I was covering the New York Yankees during spring training after they had won the World Series in '96. And I'm standing there, the players are changing right before the game. And Reggie Jackson is talking to about 15, 20 New York reporters because they were down in Tampa for spring training. And I was standing there. I've covered every bit of spring training. And he stops in the middle of what he's talking and points at me and says, "Excuse me, who are you?" And it was obviously it was embarrassing, but it was like, whoa. And to have the other reporters kind of stick up for me was very nice. And then later on, Joe Torre apologized on behalf. And then the next day, Reggie did as well. But to have those kind of things happen, that was, in the mid to late 90s. It's still something that I had to deal with at other sports that I've never, not once, had a situation like that in NASCAR.
Holly, you've been around this sport a while of NASCAR, and I think right now some of the coverage is a little bit unfair in terms of the people keep talking about what are we going to do about the problems. I'm not too sure there's that many problems. People keep talking about TV ratings, and I don't think that's a direct reflection of the product on the racetrack, and people keep talking about butts and seats, but we've had good crowds recently. I feel as if NASCAR is in a pretty good solid footing right now. There's some things they need to work on, and there's some things they could do better, but I don't know if this kind of rush of negativity that's going on right now in terms of the coverage of the sport is exactly fair or right. What is your take on the state of the sport right now?
Well, I would agree with you on that. It's one of the few sports that so many people have opinions on how they constantly want to change it. If a championship is decided one way, some other people think we've got a better way. So then it's changed and covered that way, and then another group says we have a better way to do it. There's definitely a lot of input, it feels, and I think that's one of the reasons that fans like it so much is because they feel like they can do it. But I would agree with you. I think the sport has fantastic racing. I mean, how can you possibly complain about the racing? It's been so good. The championship, there's a lot of excitement for it, and it's still so much in the air. It's not like somebody just took it and went with it and dominated the whole season and is going to win. There's still so many reasons every week to watch the race, and I would agree with you. And I think that if I were to make an argument for one of the bigger things that we can do, with the butts in the seats, I mean, it's a new generation watching. And again, I go back to my kids who have just graduated college, and they're on their phones all the time. So maybe we need to work on ways to get them to the racetrack, to bring them from the phones or bring their phones with them and get them to the racetrack and keep that next generation as interested. But that's not to say they aren't interested. They're just maybe getting it a different way.
I think also, Holly, as we're talking, as you and me are talking right now, they are still negotiating the lawsuit, the big antitrust suit between 2311 Front Row and NASCAR. At least we're at the table right now. At least we're bargaining. But I really do feel, though, that this lawsuit, when you hear, it's hard to get caught up in all the legalese and what one side is saying, another side is saying. But I think the bottom line is if they don't get this hashed out, if they don't come to a reasonable agreement, and somebody loses and somebody wins, if you can really ever have a lawsuit where one person wins and one person loses, that it could be very detrimental to some aspects of the sport. This is a pretty serious thing that's going on, isn't it?
Well, it really is. And, just overall, you hate to think that any sport would have to have this situation and to have it resolved. I don't know, maybe because of all the cancer I've had to beat. I'm such an optimistic person, and I really, really believe that they are going to resolve this. I think that cooler heads will prevail. They're going to find a way to compromise in whatever way that may be. And I really am hopeful that it's going to turn out better than maybe some naysayers are expecting it to. I think it's best for the sport. I mean, we are talking about fundamental aspects of the sport. And I think the sooner it can get resolved, the better everything will be. So it's no longer a sidebar conversation.
I'm with you 100% on that. This could be really bad, but I always think, when there is interest, that cooler heads can prevail. And I'm with you, though, Holly. I try to be the 100% optimist, and you'll appreciate this story. It was years ago. Fella named Nick Ramey from Yates Motorsports. He had asked me actually, it was Yates Engines back then. He was in the engine department. He said, "Hey, could you come MC something for MRO?" I said, well, of course, if it's MRO, of course I'm going to do it. I didn't ask any questions. And then on the way there, he told me that the guests were Barry Dodson, Kyle Petty, and Bobby Allison. And I thought to myself, well, what a great gathering. I love those guys. And man, I can handle this. I know those guys real well. It didn't occur to me till we got there and we started talking. The one thing that these three men had in common was they had all lost children. And as a younger person then, Holly, I don't think I was anywhere near as upbeat and optimistic as I am these days. But I left that talk after each of those men talked about losing a child. Again, it made me feel the family of NASCAR even more, that NASCAR is just this one big family. They talked about how everybody huddled around them and helped them from the NASCAR family, but also at the same time, it really taught me a lot about appreciating every day and looking at the bright side.
I agree with you. And, those three men in our sport have been through such incredibly tough times. And, I covered their situations and spoke to them afterwards. And, certainly knew Davey Allison and Clifford and Adam Petty. So I totally get what you're saying and how difficult it is for them to speak about it and to go on. But then you come away and you think, if they can be so positive, if they can be in such a good place, we can too.
Yep, there's no question about that. Now, when you go, Holly, when you go to an F1 race or an Indy race, I've been fortunate enough to just do a couple of IndyCar races. I've never been able to do an F1 race to cover one. But do you feel the camaraderie? Do those racing series have that family feeling that NASCAR does?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Sorry.
No. In one word, no. Not to the same extent that NASCAR does. Absolutely not. I would argue that IndyCar more so. I think there is that much more of a feel in IndyCar. So I will say they do. Formula One is its own animal. And, it's very interesting. I've covered motorsports for 35 years, and I go to an F1 race and they kind of look at you like, now, are you going to be able to do this? And, I'm like, I've covered racing. I have an idea. It's definitely a different animal, and I think they like that it's a different animal, frankly.
Yeah, but I tell you that the one thing that I always tell people about, we were recently at the Waltrip Brothers event, and they were talking about how everybody kind of huddles around them when they have their charity event, when somebody else has their foundation event. But I think where that really comes from, Holly, is the fact that, and Formula One and Indy are like this too, but not, I don't think, to the extent because of how many events there are, because the 38 event schedule at NASCAR. No other American-based sport like that has everybody competing, of the major league sports, has everybody competing at the same venue every weekend for that many events throughout the course of the year. And I think you almost can't help but get a family feeling when you're in that situation.
I agree. And just for the record, I want to say, the drivers are fantastic in Formula One. They're great to interview. They're interesting. They're super kind. It's the access. So I just want to make sure that I'm saying that, because they are great. And IndyCar absolutely the same way. But you're right. There is that feeling. When I have been diagnosed with both of my cancers, the first people to reach out to me were auto racing owners, drivers, people on the team that I didn't even know. Cared. I'm like thinking, how did you even get my number? They are caring. We're so fortunate to be a part of a sport where it's people first. It really is.
So, Holly, if there's a young lady out there that wants to be a motorsports journalist right now and hasn't started, what would you say to her?
Well, I would say work on your writing, pay a whole lot of attention, just infiltrate as much as you can with all the different races, with the podcasts, with television. Just take in all the information and start reaching out. Don't be afraid. You've got to make phone calls. You've got to send text, emails. Get in touch with racetracks to try and see if you can get out there and attend the race. Even if you are only tweeting about it one race weekend. Maybe that's what it takes to get in. Who knows who you're going to sit next to? You might sit next to somebody that says, hey, I could use a stringer to cover this race here. It's really just about being bold and going for it. You have nothing to lose. And I love seeing young journalists, and I do feel like we're in a good place there. I feel like we've got a lot of new blood, so to speak, that's come in. And even those of us that are veterans, we're having to learn that we're not just writing anymore. You've got to have, like, look at Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi and yourself, obviously. You've got podcasts. You've got to be good on social media. And to me, though, the heart of it all is to know how to write and to know how to do interviews, to be respectful, and to make sure what you're writing you've checked out and that it's correct. So I guess I sound old school with that, but to me, that's the heart of it. And it's certainly the heart of journalism, real, true journalism.
Holly, I think you hit that 100% on the head. And here's the toughest question of the day, I believe, or maybe it's an easy one. I hope it's an easy one. If someone faces the challenges you faced in terms of battling a beast like cancer, what do you say to them, Holly?
I say the thing that got me through it, which is to only believe that you are going to get through it, to be so grateful for the people that care and realize that that is what helps. I am so filled with gratitude, and that's what helped me. I mean, I went through stage 3 cancer twice and did not always have the best hope from my doctors originally. And you know what? I put my head down. I was grateful about it and took in the love and like I said, remained thankful for everything. And so it's tough, but people do care and allow them to.
Holly, you are a lovely person. I am so proud to call you a friend, and I have a world of respect for you. Thank you so much for joining us.
I am so proud to call you a friend. And after all these years, it was such an excitement to get an invitation to speak with you. I think the world of you. I have the utmost respect for you and have always. So thank you, and keep on keeping on, because you are fantastic.
Holly, thank you. I'm almost going to get a little teared up, but thank you so much. And I will see you very soon in person.
Thank you again.